Hello, and thank you all for joining us this afternoon. I'm Patrick O'Riordan, the Director of the Department of Building Inspection. I want to thank all of you for taking the time out of your day to ask questions, share your perspective, and offer your advice on how we can improve. Hearing from you is a critical part of our improvement efforts, and we're fortunate to have you with us as partners. Now, we have important updates today about the new automated process for routing building permit applications and a recent transition from physical stamps to text approvals. Then we have important updates about PermitSF's first 100-day achievements, and then we'll receive a legislative update about some of the initiative's key permit reforms. Learn the latest from the Permit Center and get briefed on the request for information sent out by the Mayor's Office for the permit tracking system replacement. Let's find out what's next for PermitSF. After that, we'll open up the floor for general questions. And let's get started now with Planning Director Rich Hillis about SF's first 100 days accomplishments. Thank you.
Hey, Patrick, thank you all for being here, and thank everyone for your input during this first 100 days of PermitSF. I think we've accomplished a significant amount. The mayor introduced a legislative package we want to talk to you about. There was an RFI issued for a new system, and I think departments are working better together, which was kind of a big goal of PermitSF. Certainly we have more to do, and this is an ongoing initiative. But I think with your help, we've accomplished a significant amount, and we want you to continue to give us suggestions and ideas. Let us know where we're not doing well, and let us know where we're doing well. Just a point on kind of staffing of PermitSF. So as we talked about last time and throughout this process, PermitSF is a multi-agency initiative with planning and DBI, the Permit Center, small business, DPW, fire, and others in the permitting world. We were leading this out of planning. Many of you may have heard that I'm leaving. My last day is actually Friday, so I have two more days here with the city. And Liz Waddy, who was a member of the PermitSF executive team, has been asked to lead the effort along with the collaboration of others that I mentioned there. And again, it's critical that we're working across agencies and really doing things that are customer focused, and again, hearing from you on how we can do better. So I just wanted to make that announcement and then turn it over to Liz to talk more specifically about the first 100-day accomplishments. But thank you all for your continued participation in this. We were counting on you as we continue to do this work to hold us accountable and make sure we're doing the right thing. So thanks.
Liz. Thank you. Thanks, Rich. And we for sure have big shoes to fill, but really appreciate your leadership over this first 100 days of PermitSF, which, as everyone here knows, is a new initiative. It's not something that we've ever formally done before here in San Francisco. So I'm really honored and humbled to be stepping into this role. Again, I really see myself more than anything as just the kind of the agenda maker, the convener of people. And really, this is a group effort of working together to, most importantly, listen to all of you. So many of the accomplishments that we have from the first 100 days, and we can go to the next slide. So many of the accomplishments we have from the first 100 days, the genesis of those ideas came from customers. And that is really, to me, the focus and one of the guiding lights of what PermitSF is all about, is listening to all of you, hearing your experiences and where those pinch points have occurred over the years. We know the permitting process is made up of, hundreds, if not thousands, of tiny little requirements or experiences or people that you have to work with. There's not going to ever be one big silver bullet fix. It's going to be fixing a lot of small things to make the experience over time, to improve it, and to honestly also look backwards. And we often add rules, but we often are not reflective in looking at what rules are now outdated and no longer apply, but add a level of process and bureaucracy that isn't giving us sort of a policy bang for the buck, but is causing sort of time and money and sort of consternation for our customers. So that is a big part of our ethos, is really starting to reflect on the processes that exist, identify where we can streamline things, where processes are no longer valuable, where we can make improvements, and where we're maybe just not aware of where problems persist. Some of those are going to be simple and straightforward and where there's a lot of consensus, and there are going to be others that are stickier and harder to solve, but that's sort of part of the effort of us all sitting in the same room every week at a leadership level and really starting to tackle those issues. So thank you in advance. Again, our focus on this is to make sure our goal, which again, it's a lofty goal. The mantra I keep saying is progress, not perfection. It's continuing to move the ball forward and make progress in the permitting process so that it becomes faster for our customers, it's predictable for our customers, and it's transparent, and we're all working together. Next slide. So today, we're going to actually, a big chunk of the presentation for PermitSF today is a bit of a reflection of the first 100 days. It's basically the work that we did over the first 100 days is now manifesting. I'd say a big part of it is we've got a big presentation today on legislation that's moving forward. Over this week and beginning next week, tomorrow, we have a big grouping going to the Planning Commission tomorrow. So sort of a plug for that. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But we'll also talk about accomplishments that we work together on relating to performance measures, and a lot of key decisions that we've been grappling with over the last 100 days are starting to manifest on the technology front. And so that is the focus of today's presentation, is it's a lot of the work that we've been doing over the last 100 days is now advancing. Next slide. And before we jump off on this, we're going to sort of, again, walk through legislation, some improvements we've made at the Permit Center in terms of performance measures. We're going to talk about technology. And at the end today, also, we'll talk a little bit about what's next and what's coming in our next 100 days. So with that, I'll take a pause and ask Katie Tang, who's the Director of Office of Small Business, to join me as we walk through and share with you the current first 100-day legislative package that was introduced on day 100, and it's now working its way through the legislative process. So Katie and I will sort of take turns walking everyone on the public forum through the legislative package and the highlights. And again, really want to give thanks to all the folks who have, in a really collaborative way, shared their personal stories, shared their experiences, shared their thoughts of how we can do better. I think more than anything, it's highlighted to us that we have a group of people who are really invested in making San Francisco better, and not just, complaining, but wanting to have a seat at the table to help us solve these problems and sort of helping us guide through where there's valuable improvement to be made. So I just wanted to, again, thank folks, because again, most of this legislative package has come from feedback we've heard from both, a lot of small businesses, but also from all of our stakeholders. So with that, next slide. This is basically the sort of table of contents, if you will, of the topics that the first 100-day legislative package is tackling. We know we have a lot more legislation already in the queue that we're starting to think through for the next 100 days, but this is what we were able to accomplish in the first 100 days. So at a very high level, and we'll jump into each of these in a little bit more detail. Sidewalk usage by businesses. So these are, different types of sidewalk displays that businesses need. We heard this was a pinch point. We have a legislative solution. Minor encroachment permits came up a lot as a big pinch point for a lot of people in the permitting process. We'll dive into that. Reducing sort of the cumbersome and clarity around business signage, eliminating some permit types and clarifying others. Making some improvements to rules in the planning code around storefront transparency, particularly for business types where it just doesn't make sense to mandate it. Loosening some controls on the ground floor downtown. Clarifying some code provisions around impact fee waivers for commercial to residential adaptive reuse projects. We've got more to come, sort of, I don't know whether this is version 2.0 or 3.0 of the amnesty program for awning signs and security gates. So we'll talk a bit on that. We've done some code cleanup on nighttime entertainment permits. Similarly, made some changes to the planning code provisions around temporary uses. done some cleanup around and clarifying the planning department's priority permit processing regulations, and lastly, collaborated closely with Supervisor Engardio on making some pretty significant changes to variance requirements for rear yard structures and or accessory structures. So don't want to go too much into the details. We've got slides for each of these, but that's sort of the overview that we introduced on May 20th that is now working its way through the legislative process. Next slide. Great. And with this one, I will hand it over to Katie Tang to walk through the sidewalk legislation.
All right, so the first one up here has to do with sidewalk tables and chairs and also display merchandise, and then we'll get into the minor encroachment permits. But right now, if a business wants to place tables and chairs or display merchandise outside on the sidewalk, it involves a process of permit application, a fee, certificate of insurance, site plan, an annual renewal, all of that to the Department of Public Works. So we really want to fundamentally change how all of this works. We know a lot of businesses love having tables and chairs outside and displaying merchandise, but it can be really costly and also a little bit intimidating sometimes in terms of the process. So we're really thankful to the Department of Public Works for the partnership on this. And so really, again, changing the way we do things here in the city. So instead of going through everything I just mentioned, business owners would instead submit a simple registration to Public Works. There would be no fee. They would attest to understanding the city guidelines. So for example, maintaining the path of travel, making sure that you bring your furniture in and out every day, every night. And so all the guidelines remain the same. And then enforcement would only begin upon the second an unaddressed validated complaint. So there will be opportunities where, the city will let you know that someone has made a complaint, and we hope that you'll address them. And so the penalties would not kick in until, again, the second warning there. So we do think that this will make it a lot easier for businesses to be able to really increase the number of customers they're able to serve, and by making it simpler and free to do so. So we're really excited about this. Next slide, it has to do with minor encroachment permits. So we see a lot of cases where people are making some what we consider really routine improvements. So for example, if you need to install an ADA push button or an actuator, and for some reason you can't place it on your facade, but you need to put it somewhere like right next to your building, or you might have a door or a gate that swings outward onto the public right of way. Or you might have a water spout that is basically standing out into the sidewalk, that you would need to obtain a minor encroachment permit from the Public Works Department. So this can take a little bit more time and money for businesses, especially for these, again, things that can be considered more routine. And so for those very specific exceptions, you will no longer need to get a minor encroachment permit from the Public Works Department. You will still need to get your permit from DBI, of course. So that doesn't waive that requirement, but at least it could shave off a couple of months and definitely some money on folks who for the projects that require these elements. All right, so next slide, I'll turn it back to Liz.
Thanks, Katie. So this next ordinance that's going to the Planning Commission does a couple different items. The first section here is related to signs and storefront transparency requirements. So we are going to be changing the planning code, to no longer require a planning approval for business signs painted on facades or storefront glazing. The way it is right now, we've always required a building permit so that the planning department could review painted signs. That was sort of our vehicle for the planning review. I think anyone at DVI ever needed to review those in the first place. And a lot of our small businesses have really grappled with the fact that it just doesn't make common sense to be required to effectively file for a construction permit at the building department when all they're doing is painting. And so we've sort of reflected on this and got a lot of feedback from small businesses who often got caught up in enforcement and had decided that this was a policy that we were willing to pull back on. And so moving forward, small business owners or business owners do still need to comply with the rules around, there are already rules around, for example, in most neighborhood commercial districts, it will be, you can only have a business sign occupy 1/3 of the frontage of your building. So those type of size constraints will still be in place. So things don't go absolutely, crazy painting over the whole building facade, but within that, businesses no longer need any kind of governmental approval to just paint their business sign on either, again, the facade or the glass. The only exemption to that is for listed historic structures. So obviously, if you're a landmark building or a conservation district, those processes still remain as is. But for the average building, people can just paint their business sign and move on and not need a permit, not need to pay for that, not get caught up in enforcement if they didn't understand that rule in the first part. We're also making some code clarifications around interior signs. We were seeing a lot of small businesses really get caught up with wanting to buy, cute little Etsy neon signs that they put back by their cash wrap in their business or things of that nature. And there's sort of a lack of clarity in the planning code as to whether a sign that is on the inside of a building but visible from the sidewalk is considered a sign that needs a permit. So we're clarifying that any sign that is not touching or affixed to the glass on the inside is not considered a sign that's regulated by the planning code. Second bullet here, moving on to the transparency requirements. We're amending the planning code, which hopefully this feels pretty sort of commonsensical here, but the planning code requires typically that 60% of storefront of active uses is transparent, so you can see into the business. There are a handful of types of businesses that really don't want to be transparent. Things like childcare facilities, homeless shelters, mortuaries, religious institutions, reproductive health clinics, and schools. We felt like these were types of businesses that could have that just not apply. So this ordinance waives the requirement for needing transparency from those. That will also help a handful of childcares that we have right now in the enforcement queue that are caught up in that requirement. And so that should be moving forward as well. The last segment here on this page is relating to downtown and ground floor uses. As you all I'm sure know, we have a very high vacancy rate, right, in the heart of our downtown, over 35%. And right now the planning code prevents offices effectively from being on the ground floor. So what this legislation would do, although we still think that's a really important planning principle at its core of having sort of active uses at the ground floor, we also feel like right now we're sort of at this tipping point where we need to, vacant storefronts are also not helpful. They're not helpful for the adjacent small business that is a coffee shop or a sandwich shop or things of that nature when they've got a lot of vacancies and sort of a lack of eyes on the street. And so what we're saying is basically we need sort of an injection shot to our downtown here of removing governmental constraints. We're putting a sunset provision on this of 2030. So basically a 5-year term where we're loosening those ground floor controls with the hopes that that will just have an influx of different types of businesses moving in, anything from, a larger office building that may have a lot of vacancies on the ground floor, but they maybe want to be amenitizing their office buildings to attract 10 workers back to the office, hopefully 5 days a week. It might be that type of scenario, but it might also be just a smaller, 2 or 3 story, older, Class C office building that maybe a company wants to take the whole thing and doesn't want to be in the business of being a landlord to a retail sales and service on the ground floor. So it just opens up those opportunities, and but it does have a finite termination of 2030, at which point we hope our downtown is flourishing again and we can go back to the planning principle of active ground floor uses. Next slide. This next one is a pretty minor change. This is more of a planning code clarification. There was legislation back in March that waived impact fees for basically commercial to residential conversion projects. Nothing about that policy is changing whatsoever. The language in that legislation used the term conversions from non-residential to residential. What we didn't realize, I think, when that was being drafted, that was intended to cover all uses that are non-residential. If they convert to residential, you get an impact fee waiver. I think the oversight was that the planning code actually has a defined term that is non-residential that does not include all things that are non-residential. So this is a little bit of just code cleanup, to be honest. And lastly here on this section, similar to the previous one I was talking about for downtown, we are amending the RC3 and RC4 code sections For the upper floors of buildings, where previously there were limitations on the ability for folks to do retail on upper floors and office on some floors. And so we're basically saying, hey, above the ground floor, if somebody wants to do office, if somebody wants to do retail, those should be available above the ground floor. We still are retaining controls for active ground floor uses in those zoning districts, though. Next slide. Handing it back over to Katie for awning signs and security gates.
All right. So as many of you may know, the city has had an amnesty program for for awnings and signs, at least for the last 2 years. So a lot of businesses have these existing awning signs and also security gates for a number of years, but they do need to legalize them with a permit. And we've been trying to make it easier for people, especially again, for the existing structures to be able to do so. What is mostly changing here is that we're adding security gates as part of this amnesty program. There's actually 2 different security gate amnesty programs. And so we want to make sure that there's just really one in the code that's very clear. And also one of the key changes to the planning code is that unless you're in a historic building, the gates can be 100% non-transparent. So we've heard from a lot of small businesses, especially with repeated vandalism and burglaries, that how important it is for them to have these solid gates to prevent those repeated issues and having to spend all this money on replacing their, broken glass and doors and so forth. And so this will be the significant change, allowing the 100% solid gates, both for existing businesses as well as for new ones moving forward, again, unless you're on a historic building. So that will help, I think, many of the businesses that have had to deal with these compliance issues. All right, next slide. All right, 2As, Liz.
Great, thanks. So this one is fairly straightforward. We have section in the planning code. Again, this is entirely planning code that's related to temporary uses. Think things like a farmer's market or a neighborhood celebration or a pop-up, pop-up retail, things of that nature. We had a fair number of temporary uses that were added to the planning code during COVID. The code section was started to get really unwieldy. It was really long. There were a lot of things that actually in reality had some common themes in terms of duration of temporary uses, things of that nature. So a big part of this is actually just code cleanup so that folks can really understand what are the options, and it reads a little more clearly. It was starting to get very difficult to implement. So that's the bulk of this, candidly. The one exception to that would be pop-up retail. We've sort of redefined pop-up retail in large part because the industry around pop-ups has really evolved over time. I would say when I started 20 years ago, there wasn't really pop-up retail wasn't a thing. Obviously that's evolved a lot, and we've had a lot of lessons learned. We learned a lot during NBA All-Stars where there are a lot of pop-ups throughout the city. And so anyhow, we've really refined that definition and allowances in response to what we've heard from retail brokers and from folks who are wanting to activate vacant spaces and do pop-up events. So that's the primary change to that code section. Next slide. Priority permit processing program. I'll touch on this one briefly. I think we really see this as more of just a good government code cleanup as well. Right now, in the planning department, there's 2 different priority processing programs for folks who need a CU for commercial businesses. So think things like if you're in a zoning district where you need a conditional use for a restaurant on the ground floor, it's uses like that need a CU. Nothing about this changes whether you need a CU or not, but we have 2 programs right now. One is more of a commission policy, so it's not in the code, and one is sort of hard coded in. The commission policy one right now is open to anyone citywide, so any business citywide. There's no geographic carve out. If you meet the use parameters that are outlined in that, you're basically guaranteed a commission hearing within 90 days. You're guaranteed placement on the consent calendar, and we as staff produce an abbreviated staff report. In the codified version, it's pretty much the same applicability criteria. There's a teeny bit of Venn diagram differential there, but it's generally the same kind of thing of, ground floor uses that aren't merging storefronts, aren't removing dwelling units, things of that nature. But that one does have a geographic carve out. It carves out community Caia Vente Quattro in the Mission as well as North Beach. It also does not guarantee placement on the consent calendar, but it does guarantee 90 days. So there's a lot of crossover and similarity between these two programs. It was very confusing to have two different programs. And so what we're doing is basically smushing them together to make one program that is codified. We've heard from small businesses that it's actually really helpful to effectively have government performance metrics coded into the planning code. So a commitment around 90 days being in the planning code. We've heard from folks that that helps with lending and being able to kind of, if they're needing to get lending, they can say, hey, look, I should know whether or not I can open my business within X amount of time, and that's helpful, especially for smaller folks that need traditional lending. And we are basically saying it's open to anyone citywide. We are not doing a geographic carve out, but we're not committing to placement on the consent calendar. I think we feel pretty strongly that we need to be able to assess every project on a case-by-case basis. There may be projects that we recommend disapproval for, as we, normally would review projects. But really all we're committing to with this sort of merger of the two programs is just a performance metric of you will get your day in court within 90 days. So that's all we're committing to, which I think, again, we don't need code to do that. I could just set that as a performance standard for the planning department. But we've heard from the small business community that having that hard-coded is helpful, especially for financing purposes. So that's what this file is all about. Katie, nighttime and entertainment.
All right. So in the spirit of trying to shave down the amount of time it takes to get some of these permits through, there are a couple of permits where they touch upon entertainment. So for example, extended hours or place of entertainment or limited live performance and fixed place amplified sound. So under the police code, it actually says that some of these permits need to be routed to either the planning department or to DBI. The review is actually duplicative because it is what Entertainment Commission already is reviewing for these projects. And so it is adding about 30 days worth of time unnecessarily to these particular permits. And so the legislation would amend the police code to actually state that those types of permits will no longer need to be routed. And you can see on the screen here to either DBI or to planning department. And this legislation will actually be at the Public Safety and Neighborhood Services Committee tomorrow. Next slide. That might be. Sorry, there was one more piece to this, which is that we're also trying to reduce costs for events and venues. So there is a structuring of the permit filing fee for one-time outdoor amplified sound permits. Again, we've heard so much about how foot traffic is really lacking in a lot of these commercial corridors and how events and entertainment and some type of vibrancy has been really helping with existing businesses. And then also eliminating the permit requirement for certain things like ball or ring throwing games, dance halls, and mass balls. And then, of course, there is the waiver for nonprofit and neighborhood organizations. And then also the legislation will remove some redundant noticing requirements that have to do with limited live performance and fixed place outdoor amplified sound. Next slide.
Great. Next slide. That wraps the legislation overview.
Yeah, and thank you so much, Liz and Katie. We now want to open up the floor to any questions about this topic. Do we have any callers that want to provide feedback or ask questions? But before you begin asking away, I want to share some guidelines on how to ask a question. If you're joining us today on your computer, all you have to do is click the raise hand button at the top of the screen. And when I call your name, you can click on the unmute button and ask your question. If you are calling us or calling into this meeting, you can dial *5 to raise your hand and wait your turn. And when I call your name, you can dial *6 to unmute. And please be sure to state your name and organization if you are representing one. And with that said, please ask away. Looks like we have one question from GBA Incorporated. Looks like you are unmuted now. Feel free to ask your question.
I don't think you can hear
GBA Inc.,
anything.
are you there? Yeah, I don't hear you. All right, we will come back to you later. Does anyone else have a question or any feedback, suggestions? Oh, looks like we have one from Anne Cervantes. Anne, please unmute your mic and ask away.
On these nighttime entertainment districts, especially in low-income neighborhoods where the residents live above the commercial spaces and their commercial space is their business, is there a noise volume ordinance to that?
So,
as
Anne,
not to disrupt the families that live above those businesses?
yeah, thank you for the question. And so we're not changing any of the requirements around what level of sound, and that is something that the Entertainment Commission does regulate and enforce. So if there are complaints, they will actually go out and measure the sound for that. So we're not changing any of that. We're not changing any of the underlying zoning where these nighttime entertainment uses can be. All we're saying is that if you do have to get one of these permits, that we're eliminating the redundant review by planning department and DBI, but the Entertainment Commission will still be enforcing the existing laws, and then also the zoning is not changing.
And what I would just also add onto that too is this doesn't take away the normal review that would be required if somebody was doing a change of use to nighttime entertainment, for example, or something like that. This is only when it's, we do both that primary zoning review of a use change, but then there was the secondary review of when the Entertainment Commission permit came in, those and the police permits would get routed to us once again. So that's where the sort of duplication came in, is it's redundant because we've already either done that or it's an existing establishment that's already been assessed, a couple years prior.
So a second question, it has to do with security issues in the roll-up gates. A number of my clients, both small and large clients that are on commercial corridors, are really having a problem, especially around the 16th Street corridor and the changes that were made there with the dumping of the fentanyl users in that area. And is there a way of, I'm looking for ways of attaching roll-up gates to some and to protect some of those facades where it's really heavy on that Michigan Street corridor. And some of them are historic buildings, some of them are not. Is there any way that we can try to help these businesses expedite their permitting process? Because a lot of them were a little afraid of what was going to happen with the protest, and it's luckily they diverted that traffic from Dolores Park and not coming through some of those problem corridors. Is there anything that we could use temporarily to stalling the roll-up doors? Because sometimes we have curtain walls and we can't attach anything above or on the outside. Do you have any way that we can temporarily put these roll-up gates and security gates on the facades?
Well, and I'll just say that we are doing our very best, again, given similar feedback to what you've provided, to get this legislation through as soon as possible. So actually, this legislation will be up at Planning Commission tomorrow if you'd like to provide that feedback. And then right after that on Monday is going to the Land Use Committee. And so we are trying to get all this adopted before legislative recess, understanding that people from small businesses have been wanting this since 2 years ago, probably. And so, whatever feedback you provide will be helpful just to advance these.
Absolutely, and our goal is that the sooner this can pass, and we need all the support from folks who can share with our Planning Commission why this is important and impactful for small businesses, because this is a big shift in our sort of policy position for gates. And so I think for our commission to hear from folks on the ground how impactful this will be, the sooner that process plays out and this can become law, then these become sort of principally permitted and can be signed off over the counter from the planning department. So in terms of like the best way to expedite would be to get this legislation over the finish line, so then we can do a day in, day out review of these gates for clients in the future. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Anne. Next, we have a question from Catherine Fitzgerald. Catherine, please unmute your mic and ask away. Catherine, can't hear you. Okay, we will come back to you. GBA Incorporated, looks like you have a question. Can't seem to hear you. We will come back to you in a later time. Otherwise, it looks like that's all the questions we have for this topic. Let's move on to the next one. Thank you so much, Liz and Katie. Now we have Rebecca Villarreal Mayer from the Permit Center who will talk about Permit Center operational updates.
Thank you, Kelly. So the Permit Center is committed to creating a permit experience that is fast, predictable, and transparent. And so for the first 100-day delivery, we did this by creating a set of performance standards. So we will be providing clear timelines that we share with the public, creating performance targets centrally that are shared across departments and folded into staff performance management plans, and launching new permit dashboards that allow you to hold us accountable. Oh, and I just realized, Kelly, could you advance the slide? Thanks. Okay, so just an overview of what I said. So, part of our principles of PermitSF are really creating transparency and accountability for our work. And so I'm going to go into a little bit of detail about how we're doing that. Next slide, please. So these are our new performance dashboards that can be found on the city's website. The URL is at the bottom of the slide here and can also be found off of the PermitSF city pages. In addition to working with the PermitSF departments, so, working very closely with DBI and planning and public works on this, we had a lot of support from our partner agencies, the city performance division and the controller's office and the city administrators, digital and data service teams to help design these dashboards, help us really analyze the data in the right way and define targets well. So the city set performance targets for each review step, which includes completeness check, first plan review, and the revision review process. To set these targets, the city reviewed past performance and identified ambitious yet attainable goals that could be achieved the majority of time. So our goal as a city is to meet these targets at least 75% of the time. And in each one of the dashboards, there you see the colored sections that tell you green, we're doing okay. Red is sort of a cautionary warning, but just to the left of them are the targets themselves. And so you can see what our commitment to you is. Next slide, please. In addition, we have been working on a number of customer experience items. So there were many discrete changes, low-hanging fruit, if you will, that were implemented during the first phase of the PermitSF work. And these are a few of the highlights that we wanted to share with you. The collection process for the SFUSD fee, as many of you know, added anywhere between 2 to 10 days to every permit and included a set of PDFs. So this form has been eliminated from the process for both OTC and in-house projects. The city will use data that you're providing already to calculate the accessible space being added to certain residential projects, and will calculate the fee. This process will speed up time to issuance. Also, as part of the building permit application process was a PDF for the health department that was required of all projects. So this has been transformed into questions that are only asked for relevant projects, and we're collecting that information digitally. So another PDF form that we've eliminated. As of a few weeks ago, we added self-service queuing to the Permit Center. There is a mobile app that customers can download and use to queue themselves rather than repeatedly visit the help desk. So putting a little more control of your experience in the Permit Center right into your hands. There is a new web page that centralizes core permitting functions into one place. So you don't need to remember many different websites and go to many different places to, navigate our information. We put it into one place for you. And finally, the City Administrator's Permit Center team has been working this year to, and has concluded, we've been managing customer service inquiries centrally for many departments, including DBI, Public Works, Fire, and Planning, and we moved the last of the departments in over this last 100 days. We're able to better monitor service levels and ensure inquiries are being responded to and responded to timely. So 82% of inquiries received are resolved in 2 or less days. And that's thanks to the centralization of this work. Next slide, please. And finally, y'all have, if you come in, you know that we changed our hours on April 28th. Early data has been really positive from this change. Early queue closures are down at 90%. Permit processing, payment, so the start and the end of the process, is not closed early since the hours have changed. Wait times are down across all of the queues, and service counts have increased overall across all 5 of the working days. There's a decrease in customers returning to the permit center to finish work. So what we're seeing is that a customer can get more done in a single day and not have to come back to finish services. We really appreciate everybody's patience as we made this change. We know it was, challenging for a few customers, but I think resulted in much better services and availability of the staff overall for all of you. And the numbers are reflecting that. And I think I will pause here if there are any questions.
Thank you, Rebecca. We are now opening up the floor for more questions on this topic. We have a question from David. David, please unmute your mic and ask away. David, I did hear something, but I can't, it's a little bit fuzzy. I will come back to you later. Or actually, I think you asked a question in the chat. Oh, disregard that. We will come back to you shortly. Next, we have a question from Amanda Dunbar. Amanda, feel free to unmute your mic and ask your question.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. A question about SF DBI services, specifically about when a permit is expiring. Usually I have to call in inspection services and ask them when a permit that I'm working on is expiring. But I'm wondering if there's an easier way to have this information kind of like on the DBI tracking website, just so that it's like easier to track. I know that it is listed on the job card, but that's not something that we really have access to on the architecture side. And I know it would just be a lot like more streamlined and straightforward if we can get that information kind of written on DBI tracking. And even when a permit is expiring and when it is extended, like it's nice to know like what that date is as well, because that would be really helpful.
Okay, I'm gonna jump in and take that for DBI for my DBI colleagues. So I'm taking note. We have a number of great suggestions that came from the community, and so I will absolutely get that folded in to see if that's something that we could easily do now. But if not, because we've talked about PTS being a little bit of an older system. And so if it's not something we can do immediately, it is definitely something that we can put on the roadmap. And later on in the presentation, we'll hear a little bit about what we're doing to modernize our technology. But I've taken note. I think it's a great suggestion, and we'll see where we can fold it in and how quickly.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, we have a question in the chat from David. Thank you, David, for typing in your questions. David asks, MSE permit removals, does this apply only to existing conditions or also to proposed future encroachments, for example, new outswinging doors into the PROW? For office use at the ground floor, when the sunset period 2030 arrives, will permitted uses that occurred within the 5-year period be allowed to continue indefinitely, or would a CUA be required at the sunset?
Maybe I'm happy to start with the latter question around the office uses. So if the use gets vested, so if somebody comes in and pulls a permit to establish an office space at the ground floor, that space can continue as office in perpetuity so long as that use continues and they don't have a 3-year abandonment. Basically, that becomes no different than as other rules change over time, or if somebody opened a use a long time ago and the rules have changed. So they effectively become like grandfathered in. The term we use is it becomes a permitted conditional use. So you're sort of grandfathered in under the new rules, and you can continue operating. So yeah, you don't lose it just in 5 years. You just have 5 years to secure it, and then you'll be good to go if that use continues. Katie, do you have information? Otherwise, I can handle it on the minor encroachment permits. I think the question is sort of for new construction, these same minor encroachment permits are exempt from needing, or these minor encroachments are exempt from needing a minor encroachment permit. I'm not sure if I see Katie there, but I'll answer that. The intent, and I don't have the legislation pulled up in front of me, which is why I asked, but the intent of it is that these are exempt features that do not need minor encroachment permits, period. Whether it's attached, an existing building that's changing the swing of a door, whether you're building a new building, these types of features do not need minor encroachment permits moving forward. So that should answer those questions.
Excellent. Thank you, Liz. We have a question from Anne Cervantes.
I was just curious. I think I applaud the department and their coordination to achieve coordination with all the departments and stuff, and that you've put in sort of a self-evaluation form and how you're doing. But can you tell me when do you consider doing a third-party plan check, especially with a DPW? When would you consider doing that? Because some of the projects that I've worked on have had more than a year waiting for sidewalk permits. Can you give me any feedback on that and how that would be improved?
I'm happy to jump into that.
For sure.
Oh, sure, and happy to turn it over, Rebecca, if you want to chime in as well. But generally speaking, the concept of third-party reviews or sort of contracting out reviews for different agencies is definitely a recommendation that a lot of when we did sort of listening sessions with a lot of our customers, that was something that it's not the first time that it's come up. So it is something that is on that we are certainly wanting to look into. There are obviously in San Francisco, as compared to a lot of other jurisdictions, we do have some union constraints that we need to work within. So it's not as simple as just being able to decide to do that at a policy level. There are a lot of other factors that we have to consider. And so, but I do want to just share, we are looking into every single comment that's being raised by our customers in this type of forum or in other smaller breakout groups when we're meeting with AIA and other groups. We are really looking into all of those issues, so at least we can understand what our constraints are. And that is one that we're continuing to look into and better understand. But right now, I think our position is we have some limitations with labor. I don't know, Rebecca, did you have anything to add?
Oh, I wish I did, but
Okay.
I don't. I think that covers everything, but I don't know if DBI wants to chime in.
I think Liz said it right. I mean, that's kind of where we are. So I concur with what's been stated already.
Great. Thanks all. Next, we have a question from Jeremy Paul. Jeremy, please unmute your mic and ask your question.
Hello, thank you for doing this forum. It's very important and very valuable. My question is about OTC processing and the possibility of welcoming multiple applications simultaneously on a single trip around the permit center. Thank you.
Ooh, hot topic, Jeremy. So I'm going to say we are looking at right now we're thinking about OTC 2.0 for San Francisco, and working very closely right now with DBI's Permit Services Group and my group, the customer service team from the city administrator's office, to really re-envision what this could do. We know that people want more OTC. We know that you want to bring more plans in. And so we're trying to balance the right way to do that against the capacity across all the departments. So I'm not going to quite answer your question, but I am letting you know this is an active piece of our portfolio coming up, and really thinking about how to do more, because we hear everyone that you want more out of the OTC process. Thanks.
Great, thank you. I hope that answered your question. Next, we have one from Catherine Fitzgerald.
Hello, I was wanting to ask if the minor encroachment permit material that you covered would apply to residential properties as in addition to business properties, or if it's only applicable to minor encroachments of businesses. Thank you.
It's for all.
Thank you.
Great. Oh, we have another question from Amanda Dunbar.
A similar question to the person who just went before me. The regulations on security gates, is that applicable to residential projects as well as commercial?
See, Katie, all right, I'm not sure if Katie's still here. I want to 100% confirm with you, but I believe, oh, Katie, are you here?
I am here,
Okay,
but
great.
I am just double checking. So
Let us get
just
back
give me
to
a
you on
moment.
that just
Yeah.
to triple confirm.
Thank you.
And then Kelly, there was one follow-up question, which I'm happy to just answer in the meantime, that was typed into the chat from GBA Inc. asking around the performance metrics and not seeing DPW on the dashboard. And I just wanted to highlight, they actually are on the dashboard. And I think this is an important distinction. The dashboard showed basically two views. One is the planning approval stage for when you're just doing the planning approval, not the planning review of a building permit, but the standalone planning approval. So that was the first one. The second one was the building permit process. So not DBI as an agency, but the building permit process, which all of you know includes all of the permit review agencies. So all of the permit review agencies, so that's DBI, that's Public Works, that's planning's basically recheck at that stage, that's fire, that's health, that's PUC, it's everyone rolled up into that metric, and they are all held to the same standard. So that was the big effort that we went through, was to get everyone aligned on what the performance metrics would be for review of building permits. And I would just say, maybe my last plug while we're on the topic of performance metrics for everyone to know, we also just want everyone to know that, this is a big shift from what our standards were. We had a lot of diversity across the agencies of what our different standards were before this. So obviously, looking backwards, we might not be hitting the performance metric right now because that wasn't the standard over the last 6 months or the year. So this is sort of a stretch goal. We're working to make internal procedural changes so that we can be hitting this moving forward. But I would just say, to keep that perspective in mind when looking at the dashboards today, that it is looking back on our performance when this wasn't our standard. And so our goal is that every month that we move forward on, those numbers will only improve. And so I just wanted to also give that context for everyone.
Great.
All right.
Thank
so
you,
going
Liz.
back to that last question about the security gates, the code section that we're amending with regards to the transparency requirement has to do with all street frontages on the ground floor for commercial, residential commercial, neighborhood commercial, mixed use, and industrial districts. or sorry, mixed use districts only, and minus the industrial.
Great. Thank you, Katie and Liz. We have 2 more questions in the chat, but I do want to move on to the next topic, and I will call on both of you for your questions after the next presentation. Next up, we have Alex Sabato, who will talk about enhanced routing.
Thank you, Kelly. Hi, just wanted to give a quick highlight of 2 of the projects that we launched in the first 100 days. The first project is automating the in-house permit application routing. Next slide, please. So as you know, in 2024, we expanded the pre-plan check process to include citywide departments so that every department provided feedback on whether your submission was completed. And then prior to that, we also used our information sheet G20 to identify all the departments for the actual plan check. This new process automates the review routing by using the submission completeness checks to automatically determine which departments require plan checks, and also creating those plan checks in the system. By doing so, we should have faster, more accurate routing of permit applications. Next slide, please. So why are we doing this? We heard feedback from various departments that if they already said that they're not applicable to application submittal, that they don't need to review for plan checks. There's more transparency. So when you see the plan check stations created in the DBI web portal, then you'll be able to know who is going to be reviewing your project. There's fewer surprises because certain departments and divisions were added late sometimes because it would, for example, we would send applications to public health, but there were multiple divisions in public health that would need to be reviewing the application and doing plan check, and they would be added up front versus going through multiple rounds before that happened. And this also creates a smarter system so that the system's automatically doing routing, and we're actually providing the routing tables up front so you know who's going to be looking at your applications. I think there was a question on this. Kelly, do we want to wait till the end of it, or can I answer the question now?
We can answer the question now. I believe it was Jeff Hand who asks, how do you hold planners and plan checkers accountable if they make comments on items that had not changed since the last submission, but was never commented on before? I had a planner make 7 sets of comments with each one having a completely new issue that had not changed and not been commented on before.
Good question. This is related to, I believe your question is related to plan rechecks. This process of routing is actually just to streamline the process between our pre-plan checks and our plan checks. It does not necessarily change how rechecks are completed within and comments are created.
And I'm happy to jump in too, Alex, because this is something that this is not the first time this has been brought up, and this is something, not to steal the punchline of what we're working on next for the next phase of PermitSF, but this is one of the topics that we are focused and working on and developing some consistent protocols again against the across the permitting agencies of when you have. At what point does a certain number of plan check letters on the same project warrant a structured escalation with management, so you don't feel like you just keep getting new comments that are different every round. So that it's something we're working on. We want to be intentional about a solution that can apply again across all the agencies in a consistent way. So it applies to the planning department in the same way it would apply to DBI and to public works and fire, et cetera. So it's on the to-do list, and we hope that coming soon. Hopefully, before the end of 2025, we'll have a protocol to be able to introduce to you guys sometime soon. But we've heard that this is one of the big complaints that we've heard. So we're working on it.
Great. Thank you both. We have another question from Jeff Hand as well. We have a project that has been approved by all stations OTC and then submitted for structural review. It's been 70 days since we received a completion letter and the project has not even been assigned to a DBI plan checker. Is there a 60-day time response requirement, and what can we do when this occurs?
Do you want me to field this one, or would someone else like to answer this?
I'm happy to jump in, but also, oh yeah, Mary, I was going to say, Mary might want to jump in.
Hi, sure. Hi, Jeff. Thank you for your question. So I'm just trying to understand. So you have a project that was reviewed OTC, but then submitted for structural review. And it has been 70 days since you received a completion letter. So I'm assuming that the project was reviewed OTC, and then something was discovered as part of that project that made the project go in-house for review. Am I understanding that correctly? Go ahead, Jeff.
Jeff, feel free to unmute now.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, all departments, it was brought to structural and they said it was too much for them to do over the counter. Every other fire, planning, energy, they all reviewed it over the counter and said it was fine.
Okay.
They said structural it was too much, so we were then asked to submit.
Okay. So we do currently have a backlog on submitted projects. I think right now we're looking at right around 5 weeks for assignment. And I don't know if that's the 70 days, but I think what I would recommend is that I take a look at this offline for you. Sometimes I think when you get in a catch-22 kind of situation like this, what you're doing right now is exactly what you need to be doing, but reaching out to a supervisor in the department here, and I'm happy to look into it for you. So I don't know whether or not you have my email, but I can provide that to you here in the chat, and then we can connect and I'll take a look at things for you, okay?
Yes, please. I would.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jeff and Mary. Let's move on to the next topic, also presented by Alex.
Hi. So to continue on the second project that we've been doing, we just launched in May. This is the second phase of the building permits project. Could we go to the next slide? So we started a few years ago in our digital transformation, and you've seen new websites go up. You've been hearing more about the technology changes that we have made. The latest was in February. If we can go to the next slide. In February, we introduced the new permit format and the application report where we consolidated all the critical project information in one place in one report. We had a permit application. Once it's approved, everyone's paid. The application report, which is essentially a status report, is stamped by DBI and it becomes the new building permit. In February, when we launched it, we included a copy of this new report and the stamped permit application form along with the job card, and that was what would go on site. And that was kind of phase one of this project. The second phase of the project is really to eliminate the stamped permit application form at issuance. So we can go to the next page. So historically, stamps have been used on the application form to provide communication to our permit techs, information to our applicants, and communication to our inspectors. So what we're doing is by eliminating the stamps and actually consolidating that information onto the permit report, we could eliminate the use of that stamped permit application in the permit issuance process. This is actually serving as a key building block for one of our digital transformation projects. It is simplifying the permit issuance because now we're consolidating information onto one report, so you're not having to look at multiple places. It's centralizing the requirements, so anything you need will be on the permit report itself and not on part of it on the permit report, part of it on stamped application forms, and trying to dig out the various pieces. And hopefully it'll increase, it'll make faster plan check times, because right now we are estimating about 27,500 department stamp actions every year. So this just launched in May 19th. It'll take a little while for plan checks that have been in, or applications that are in process to get through this process and completely move over to the permit report. But it is started as of May 19th, and we're seeing pretty good progress on this. Do you guys have any questions on this project?
Thank you, Alex. Do we have any callers with questions on this topic or any feedback? We have one unanswered question in the chat. Question for when we get to Blue Beam reviews. We have several projects currently in the review process queue that have all been reviewed quickly by most departments, but are seeing that building and structure have a bit more of a backlog, understandably. Is there a way to put a queue ticker on the position or timeline in the queue per department to have a rough idea? We have been quite reasonably encouraged to wait until all departments are done with review before submitting a response revision, and happy to do so, but it's helpful to have a sense of timing, Jilly asks.
I think I can take this one too, Kelly. So, Julie, this is a great question, and I think it's one that's asked often about, how is it that an applicant can, so how is it that, plan check staff may know exactly when something is due? We do have some project reports where we can access that data for our staff so that they understand when timelines are coming due, and when they need to have their evaluations complete for co-compliance. But I think one of the exciting things that will be a kind of a crucial part of our new permitting system that we're looking at is there will be a lot more, I think, information that's available to both in-house staff, but also, external applicants that are looking at their plan review process and seeing where things are. So the newer permitting systems do have built-in reminder systems for staff so that they can be tracking timelines for projects that are due. Additionally, there is information that can be provided to applicants related to the actual timeline for their review, and they can see exactly which departments have provided approvals, which departments may be still outstanding, and at what stages the different portions of the review were assigned. So we do expect that the newer system will provide a lot more transparency as well to external applicants, and we look forward also to the internal reminders that it will provide for our own staff trying to keep up with timelines.
Great. Thank you, Mary, and thank you, Alex, for your presentation. Next on our agenda is Florence Simon from Mayor's Office of Innovation, who will be providing an overview on the request for information technology projects.
Great. Thanks so much. Next slide. Thank you. All right, well, thanks for having me. I'm here to talk about the Request for Information, or RFI, led by our Mayor's Office of Innovation. As folks know, Mayor Lurie's goal is to make building houses, starting businesses, making investments in San Francisco faster, simpler, and more transparent. Next slide. And we recognize that one of the things that's getting in our way today is technology. As most of you probably know, because you've interacted with our systems, we use dozens of different technology systems across departments involved in construction permits. And today that fragmentation makes the process slower and more confusing for you. For example, for one project, you need multiple permits. Applications are not all in one place. We aren't providing enough clear guidance or requirements on how to make sure that you're submitting the right thing. And that can lead to repetition and churn for customers and for our staff. Meanwhile, our systems aren't always talking to each other internally, which means we aren't always coordinating efficiently, and that can delay decisions on your permit, and that loses time and money for you and for our whole city. We also don't have a consistent performance tracking system in place to identify and fix our system bottlenecks. Next slide. So on May 20th, as part of the PermitSF 100-day actions, we released this RFI, again, request for information. This RFI represents our opportunity to partner with technology companies, many of whom are right here in our backyard here in San Francisco, to deliver better solutions for you. We posed our challenge to the market and we asked them to respond. Specifically, we asked the market to provide us with bold, creative solutions to the problem of improving permitting technology to give you a fast, simple, and transparent permitting process. We had a webinar for respondents. We got responses submitted on June 13th. We've now selected a subset of companies to present to us at Vendor Day. We plan to run an expedited procurement process and bring in one or more vendors to work with us. Next slide. Now, the technology ideas and tools that we're sourcing through this RFI and this procurement process are going to help us to make permitting look and feel very different for San Franciscans. First, we'll make it simple, easy to understand, easy to complete an application, one-stop shop where you can get everything done without having to run after 8 or 9 different departments and forms and processes. Second, we will improve transparency. We want anyone to be able to see in real time exactly where permit is in the process, what is the next step, how long it's going to take to get done. And that's going to provide the certainty and predictability that you need to move projects forward and make investments and make decisions. Third, we do plan for all our departments to work together on one system to make coordinated decisions and applications, and again, help get projects done faster and cheaper. We also know we need to hold ourselves accountable as a city to setting a high bar, figure out where the bottlenecks are, and constantly improving. And finally, we need the system to be flexible and evolve as our city's needs change. Next slide. So in this RFI, we asked technology companies and potential private sector partners to demonstrate how they can build 4 products. In the long term, we're going to build that integrated end-to-end system where all city employees from all departments can work together on every step, from intake to plan review to final approvals. Yes, it's about saving time for our team here at the city, but it's really about saving time for you, so that things aren't getting stuck or lost. We're not wasting time on handoffs. We're making decisions quickly. Second, dashboards. Data and dashboards are really central to the mayor's citywide approach to accountability and to transparency. We want to be measuring outcomes, like how we're actually speeding up projects and getting more done, and we want to measure outputs and inputs. We want to have granularity on how long things are taking, where we're getting delayed, so that we can go fix that. Now, tying this back to Mayor Lurie's executive directive from February 13th, so he proposed 2 products we wanted to roll out by that 1-year mark, right? One was a centralized online application system, and one was a system to track permit application status. So online application system, what we mean by that is a single front door that replaces all the existing forms and web pages where anyone in the city can go and learn about how to get permit and submit everything in one place. And then on the status tracker, we're looking for an open access system where applicants can see where their permit is in the process, who's responsible for review, what's the next step, anything else they might need to do or prepare, and how long each step will take. And so those are the 4 products that we hope to deliver to you in the next couple of years. So we started with this RFI so the market can bring bold, creative, and potentially unconventional solutions that can really help us to transform the system. That's why we did this RFI rather than a checklist of requirements that constrains what potential vendors and partners can deliver. Next slide. What we realize is it has to be different. We have to be working differently. with a technology partner. We need to move fast, we need to iterate, we need to be asked hard questions about how we can improve and adopt best practices for San Franciscans. We need to be really thoughtful about how technology can make processes better. So we're going to be looking for technology partners who are thinking on that. And we're committing to approach this differently with the mayor's mandate to work with urgency, with a fundamental commitment to better and more integrated data, dedicated staff in the mayor's office, and a willingness to listen, be pushed, and change in response to that. We're very serious about this technology transformation. We're very serious about delivering the best for our customers, which is you. I'm very excited about that. Next slide. Last piece here is, yeah, we've gotten great engagement on this so far. 100 folks came to the webinar. 50 companies responded, which I think is a really, really exciting mark of how much the market is excited about partnering with us to deliver better solutions to you. And we are picking 15 companies to come to Vendor Day, our invitation in early July. So we'll, have more news to share in the coming weeks, likely around late July, early August, about the specific partners that we'll bring in to deliver transformed technologies and products that deliver a simpler, faster, more transparent permitting experience. We're working against very clear and ambitious deadlines set by the 1-year anniversary of the mayor's executive directive. We plan to meet them. For a question that you might be thinking about, we will not roll this out with all permits at once. We will roll this out piece by piece with specific project types and permits, because that is what will make us be more successful. But you know that we're really committed to moving fast and delivering better service for you.
Great. Thank you so much, Florence. Appreciate that. Do we have any callers that want to provide feedback or ask questions about this topic or other topics that we've discussed? We have a couple of people in the chat. Holly says, request that you address GBA's queue about tracking DPW in the PROW. Thank you for your feedback. Liz, did you want to
answer
comment?
that really quickly? Yeah, this wasn't related to the technology, but the previous item. No, the performance measures did not include standalone DPW permits. It's only for building permits that we were establishing performance metrics for in the first 100 days. We are looking at all of the other ancillary permits across all other agencies, and that's definitely something we're looking at, but that was not part of the 100 days. We were focused on sort of the getting one thing accomplished, which is the big construction permit. So we hear you. We know there's a desire to do that. Public Works is aware and interested in establishing that, but we were not able to, only so much we can tackle in the first 100 days. So we chose the building permits.
Great. Thank you, Liz. Last question is from Jeff Hand. Is there a way for us to see the status or who has been assigned to review a vertical subdivision or minor encroachment permit at DPW? We can see info and building permits. I have not seen any way to check on DPW activity.
So for that, what I would say is that we are really focused on delivering a citywide solution, because we know that that is what is going to, again, make the system simpler and faster, more transparent for everyone. In terms of specific changes right now, such as being able to have more visibility and status at DPW, I think that's really good feedback, and we'll think through whether that's something that we can implement in the next few months, but I think that no promise is there because we're really focused on the citywide solution. So we'll take that feedback, we'll think about how it fits into the broader plan, and we'll get back to you.
Awesome.
And one other thing I'll just quickly mention on that in the meantime, if you have applications at Public Works where you don't have visibility into that and you're needing an answer, you can also, as Rebecca was talking about, sort of our customer service centralized inquiries, you can always email the centralized customer service email that she had up on her slide, and the city staff can help connect you with the right folks at Public Works so that you can get a status inquiry right now.
Great. Thank you. We have a question from Amanda Dunbar.
Hi, I have a question related to the planning department. I know that the planning department usually makes changes to the planning code, and I know there was a recent change maybe in the last couple of years about dormers. And it used to be that, you were limited to 20% of the roof area. Now it recently changed to 30%, I believe, in 2023. And this was like a new code change that I was not aware of until just recently. So I was wondering if the planning department has a way of announcing these sort of changes and making it kind of like public and more like widely known?
We do have a dedicated website to all of the legislative changes that are happening in the planning code. And I'm happy to drop that in the chat so you guys can refer back to that direct link where all of our legislative updates are. Attached with every piece of legislation that impacts the planning code, we also have kind of like a cheat sheet of the way it was, the way it is. So you can always review that legislative summary or digest in advance to scan it. The challenge we face a little bit is the planning code, I feel like nearly changes every week. Legislation both is introduced by the planning department, the mayor's office, and any member of the board of supervisors. So we know it is a very prolific activity with lots of changes, and it's it's hard for us to stay abreast of all the changes candidly, let alone our applicants. It is something we're grappling with, unlike DBI where the code changes at a predictable cadence. Ours can be any week. So I think the best suggestion I would have is to periodically track the legislative update page on our website so you can see any new ordinance. And we do have dedicated legislative affairs staff who are happy to answer questions too. So I'll drop that information in the chat, but we do post online all of our legislative changes.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Great. Thank you. I will save any additional questions for the very end. But next, for our very last topic for today, we have Liz Waddy from the Planning Department who will talk about what's next for PermitSF.
Thanks, Kelly. Oh, and maybe before I hop into that, I also wanted to use this opportunity to introduce Sarah Dennis Phillips, who's going to be our new planning director. It's just an opportunity. Her official start date has not happened yet. It will be on Monday. But I wanted to give an opportunity for everyone to meet Sarah Dennis Phillips. And with that, I'll hand it over to Sarah to say a quick hello before I wrap things.
Thanks, Liz. Sorry, I'm sitting here in an enormous room rather than being on screen close to you all. But I am officially overlapping with Rich this week as he finishes out his last week. Joining as planning director, have a lot to learn about PermitSF, although I've had the benefit of seeing a lot of the work to date through my previous role at OEWD, working with Katie Tang at OSB. So really excited about this initiative, really excited to partner on the planning department side and try to figure out how do we organizationally structure ourselves so we support all of the efforts that we're doing on the ground in terms of moving projects forward. Thanks.
Thanks, Sarah. We're really excited to have Sarah's leadership as well. And as we move on sort of the PermitSF, I would call it phase 2, our day 200 goal, our next 100-day chunk here. A couple of things I just wanted to share. Our approach for PermitSF is going to be that we operate in kind of 100-day milestones so that we continue to be held accountable, both working on efforts that are longer term that we can't necessarily deliver and get over the finish line in 100 days, such as the technology efforts that Florence just mentioned, but there are a lot of things that we can tackle. Over the next 100 days, we are working on a lot of things. Again, some small and tactical, some larger in impact. But a couple of key principles that I just want to share. Again, many of the items that we're working on have come from you all. So I would just say this is another plug to please keep the suggestions coming. I know we often get complaints, and we would love to hear like complaints with suggestions of this is a pinch point. It would be great if Y could happen instead. But we're also open to just this process isn't working, something needs to change, and we can help navigate some solutions. Over the next 100 days, we're really focused on making sure our first 100-day commitments are implemented and done well and really executed to the best that they can be. Secondly, we are really looking at ways that we can advance get customer impact and address pinch points in the process. So again, going from some smaller tactical to larger things, but what have we heard and how can we fix some of these things, knowing that there is going to be another phase and these things will keep adding up, but we want to make sure we're always thinking about how we can address pinch points that we've heard from you all. We also want to look at things that we can do differently to increase our own capacity. Are there things that are redundant steps in the process where we can increase capacity there? Are there opportunities where we've been talking a lot in our PermitSF meetings where there might be some agencies that are short-staffed with clerical work, and so they're having engineers pick up some clerical functions. We might have some extra capacity to be able to help out on that. And so how can we collectively work together so that we can be more efficient, sort of highest and best use of everyone's roles. So we're really looking deep internally at all agencies of where we can increase capacity. And then technology solutions, there's a lot of legwork and a lot of behind the scenes work that are going into creating a new technology solution. So we've got a lot of people working really diligently to make sure that the technology solution that we select will be successful and we can have a great product to launch next year. Lastly, I would say two last things. We will have another legislative package. We are planning on sort of, again, having that on a 100-day cadence. So please send us suggestions, whether those are planning code items or whether they are other places and other technical codes where, again, we have a life safety standard where obviously we can't deviate from that. But if there are suggestions in other codes or local interpretations of things, please share with us those suggestions so that we can incorporate them and assess them for the next round. And then lastly, one of the items in Mayor Lurie's executive directive was around looking at our city charter and identifying if there are any structural changes that we would want to make to the charter that are currently impediments for us operating our permitting system in a streamlined and efficient manner. So we are working with a consultant to look at the city charter and identify things that might be current constraints to how we operate business today. So all of these things at the end of the day roll back up to customer experience, government accountability, and leveraging technology and improving our technology. So with that, I don't think there's another slide, but we'll maybe click through. Oh, just one quick plug. We wanted to make the opportunity related to PermitSF. We have a great group through the Office of Small Business that really provide like small business and large business kind of concierge services, for lack of a better term. They're really supporting businesses at a very personal level, being able to help them with the individual business needs, where they're getting stuck, what they need help with. And we just wanted to plug this email address. So if any of you are working with businesses large or small and you need support, you need help, you need advice, you guys can always start there, and we have folks who can support. With that, I think that wraps our presentation.
Thank you, Liz. Do we have any callers that want to provide feedback or have questions about this topic or anything we've discussed today? We have a question from Jeff Hand. Is there a plan or a way that we as an applicant can hire an outside plan checker to expedite the building permit process?
Kind of talked on this. This question came up earlier in the presentation today, so I think I already answered that. But we've heard that feedback from a lot of folks, but we do have some labor constraints. So we hear you, but right now we're not moving forward with that.
Okay, thank you. And we have a question from Janine Cotter. Janine, please feel free to unmute your mic and ask your question. Oh, Janine, I can't hear you, but if you do have a question, feel free to type it in the chat or email us here at...
Did that work?
Oh, we hear you now. Yes.
Excellent. Excellent. It was the control shift and the various permutations of that I was struggling with. Apologies. I am asking about, we've worked, Luminalt has worked in the solar and battery energy storage space, and there's been a lot of iterations with solar permitting and battery energy storage. The federal government has given this year as the deadline for the residential tax credit. So we're seeing we're anticipating a huge crush for people to be able to get through the permit gauntlet. I'm wondering if there's any thoughts about staffing or process improvement, understanding the life safety constraints.
Sure, I'm happy to give an initial response. I don't know if there's other folks from DBI who want to chime in on this, but solar permitting is definitely something we've gotten a lot of feedback on, not necessarily exactly relating to that precise issue, but sort of at a macro level, we've heard a lot of different requests to make changes to the solar permitting process. So it is something that is on our work plan to dig into a little bit more and see if we can come up with some changes to the process. So we are focused on that, and we hope to be able to, I'd say by the end of summer, have some announcements on thoughts that we have on improving the solar permitting process. With that, maybe I'll pass it. I see Mary's come up on the slide. Maybe I'll pass it off to you, Mary.
Yeah, thanks, Liz. So we have been working with the different departments that are engaged in solar permitting with our MIS team or our IT people in order to kind of improve the solar permit application. We've gotten kind of through the business requirements on that application, and we are looking to definitely make improvements to the solar permitting application. We've kind of run into some, I think, constraints within our existing system that makes it not a totally simple thing to improve, but we definitely have an interest in making improvements to it right away, whether that be through process and then eventually through system changes, or whether or not we can, implement system changes fairly quickly. So we are looking into that. We have been working through those business requirements to make the documentation, inspections, and fee additions to solar permitting much simpler and much more straightforward. And as Liz noted, we'll be making that a priority for PermitSF.
And do you have I heard timing being end of summer. Does that permitting include battery energy storage, or is that a separate line? So for battery energy storage, if we make system changes, we were hoping to add that to the system. But we may need to do this more through process changes by the end of summer, and then system changes coming a little bit later, because we do have some constraints that we're running into in our existing permitting system. I don't think that it will be a problem in our new modern permitting system that Florence was discussing earlier today. But we will have to, see what we can do, whether or not we can make those changes in our existing system. And then I have one. Does the process improvement incorporate fire and fire review?
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to really kind of get these two departments that are the most crucial, because there's, of course, an electrical component. There's potentially a building, building inspection component. If there are any structural systems in the building that have to be beefed up to support the solar array. So sometimes there's a construction component to it. There's an electrical component, and then of course there's fire. So yeah, we're trying, and what we've been doing is we've been looking at like the different business requirements to put into kind of one unique type of permit that is designed for solar work only. But as I said, we do have some constraints within our existing system that is making things a little bit more time consuming than we initially thought. So we may just need to be looking at some process improvements in order to simplify solar permitting in the near future.
Thank you for that. I know that when we do a permit analysis, permits have dropped over 50% in 2025 over 2024, adjusted for the time frame, and it was 40% lower in the year before that. So there are. I'm hoping that we're not overbuilding for the throughput that you're going to see later.
Okay. Yeah, that's good information.
Just a thought.
Thank you.
But yeah, it's definitely increased complexity and been harder. So I appreciate you taking a look at it and it being part of the PermitSF program. Thank you.
Okay. Yep.
Great. Thank you. I don't see any more hands raised or questions in the chat. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We have our next PermitSF customer forum scheduled on October 22nd, 2025, and we hope to see you there. And thanks again, everyone. Have a great evening.